Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, can you please put your hands together to welcome on stage our host for this morning, CBBC presenter, Katie Thistleton.
Hi everyone! How you doing? Oh, that was a very good, was it? How are you doing? Great, I heard a lot of greats. That's good to hear. I can see some pyjamas out there. Let me have a look. Great, great. Christmas pyjamas, dressing gowns. I love it. Well, I've got my pyjamas on, as you can see, including these unicorn slippers. I'm surprised I've not fallen over yet. And I'm about to welcome somebody else onto the stage who we're all here to see today, and he may or may not be wearing pyjamas too. Who's excited to meet David Walliams? I'm so excited. What a wonderful venue this is as well. We're here at the Birmingham Symphony Hall. It's beautiful, isn't it? And I believe that out there somewhere we've got some children from Birmingham Children's Hospital. Give us a big cheer if you can. Where are you? Yay! Over there? Brilliant. Welcome. Well, we are here, of course, to talk about David's new book, The Midnight Gang, which is set in a hospital with a group of children as well. So it's wonderful you're here today. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, I think it's time to welcome David. But before I do that, hello to everybody who's also joining us through Facebook Live. Everyone give a big hello to everyone watching at home. I hope you've all got your pyjamas on as well. Thank you very much for tuning in. Okay, without further ado, let's welcome to the stage the wonderful David Walliams! Now, we're here today, of course, David, to talk about all your children's books, but in particular, the new one, The Midnight Gang, which you can see here displayed so wonderfully. It went straight to number one on release, unsurprisingly, and I absolutely love it. I think it might be my favourite so far, because I love that it's a whole gang of children, rather than just the one character. Can you tell us a little bit about the story for those who haven't read it yet?
Well, has anyone read it and finished it already? You have. Okay.
Nice work.
I've not read it myself, but I hear it's very good. Well, it's about a gang of children who are stuck in a children's ward of a hospital, and they're bored, and they're yearning for excitement, and they each have dreams that they want fulfilled. There's a little girl in the story who wants to go to the North Pole. She wants to be an adventurer. So the children gather together to make those dreams come true with the help of a mysterious figure called the Porter, who's a little bit based upon a character that I loved as a kid, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Quite an unusual character. But there's some brilliant films of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I saw a brilliant one made with this actor called Charles Lawton. It was made many years ago in the 1930s, and I loved it as a kid, and I always liked that character who's very ugly on the inside but has a beautiful heart. And I thought I would sort of do a version of that character for this story.
Lovely. Well, we love the characters in the book. I mean, your characters are my favourite thing about all your books because you're excellent at coming up with great characters. And there's one in particular who makes an appearance in pretty much every book, Raj. I love how Raj always gets such a big cheer. Everybody loves him. There he is. And he appears again in this book. And I did do like a little internal whoop when I first read his name in The Midnight Gang. It is great when he reappears. And we've in fact got a question here from Edie, who's been submitting a question online. He says, when and why did you decide to put Raj in all your books?
Well, where I live in London, a street up for where I live now, was a real newsagent shop called Raj's News. And there's a man in there, a very nice man called Raj, who had a very messy shop. You could never find anything. You say, oh, where's the Radio Times? And you say, oh, have you checked in under the Tipex? Or you say, I need to buy some pens. And go, oh, check the freezer next to the ice creams. And he was a very jolly character, and I used to have quite a lot of laughs with him when I'd come into his shop and talk to him. And one morning, actually, this would only appeal to the grown-ups, but one morning I came into his shop and he said, have you heard they've arrested Saddam Hussein? And I said, oh, what's he done now? We used to have quite a lot of banter together. And I liked him so much, I thought it would be a fun character to include in the first book I wrote, The Boy in the Dress. And I realized he was a great character, I thought, because he was a grown-up, but he wasn't a teacher, he wasn't a parent, he was more like a friend to the kids, more like a funny uncle. And then I put him in the second book, Mr. Stink, and then I sort of realized, well, I'm kind of going to have to continue this. And now it's quite fun because I sort of have a relationship with him as an imaginary character where in Awful Auntie, which he didn't appear because it was in the 1930s, he actually writes a letter of complaint that he's not in the book. And a child actually asked me, was that letter really from Raj or was it from you? So it's sweet. So yeah, it's nice to have a character that goes through the books. Lots of authors write series of books. Don't worry, I haven't missed much.
Welcome.
Just been talking about myself. It's because it's sort of one thing that binds the books together, I think, having this character.
It is. I like the different ways that you get him in. I liked that it's the first mention of him in the Midnight Gang was when the character George has got Holly sweets, and they're from Raj. Of course they are. So speaking of the Midnight Gang, would you like to do a reading for us?
At no extra cost to you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read from the Midnight Gang, and I'm going to read out loud, in case you're thinking, quite boring just watching him read. Thought I'd do it out loud for you. And this is, there'll be jokes, this is a part of the story where Tom has already had his first adventure with the Midnight Gang, and he desperately actually wants to stay in hospital longer. But he goes down to the x-ray room with the Dr. Luppers, and they do an x-ray, and he finds out there's nothing wrong with him. And so this is the part I'm going to read for you. "Wonderful news!" exclaimed Dr. Luppers. "There is nothing wrong with you at all." "Are you sure, Doctor?" pleaded the boy. "Yes, it's absolutely super news. There's no point you being here at the hospital at all." No, it means you can go back to your boarding school immediately." Tom realized he had to think fast if he was going to be able to stay with his new friends for another night of adventure. I feel extremely hot, Doctor," he exclaimed. "Are you sure?" asked Luppers. He felt the boy's forehead and wasn't at all convinced. "Yes, I'm burning up, Doctor," lied the boy. "Hotter than even a particularly hot cup of tea that is too hot to drink." Luppers whipped out a thermometer from his pocket and popped it in the boy's mouth. Tom needed a distraction. "I need a glass of water, Doctor," he mumbled with the thermometer in his mouth. "Urgently, or I'm so hot I might spontaneously combust." "Oh dear," replied Luppers, a note of panic in his voice. As he flapped around the x-ray room like a trapped bird, Tom slipped the thermometer out of his mouth and put it next to the fiery hot light bulb. Immediately, the temperature shot up. Then the boy slipped the thermometer back in his mouth, burning his tongue a little in the process. Luppers returned with a vase of flowers. "I couldn't find a glass. This was the best I could do right now, I'm afraid." Luppers took the thermometer out of the boy's mouth and pulled the flowers out of the vase. Green water with bits of brown bobbing around in it lurked at the bottom. "Be sure to drink it all," ordered Luppers. Reluctantly, the boy started sipping the rank liquid. "Big gulps, please," said Luppers. "Every last drop." Tom closed his eyes and swigged down the rest of it. It tasted of pond. As he did so, Dr. Luppers studied the temperature in horror. "Oh no!" "What?" asked Tom innocently. "This is the highest temperature ever recorded for a human being." "Do I win a prize, Doctor?" "No, but we're going to have to keep you in the hospital until your temperature goes back down to a normal level." Luppers whipped out a medical form and began making notes on it. "Do you have a headache?" "Oh, yes." "Fever?" "Oh, yes, I'm burning up." "Cold sweats?" "Oh, yes, suddenly I'm freezing." "Aching joints?" "Ah, yes." "Blurred vision?" "Yes, but sorry, who is speaking?" "Dry throat?" "It's hard to answer, my throat is so dry." "Excessive tiredness?" "I don't have the energy to answer." "Hearing problems?" "Sorry, can you repeat that?" "Pain when you pass water?" "Yes, it hurt when I walked past the fish tank." "Chronic indecisiveness?" "Yes and no. Doctor, you name it, I've got it." Luppers broke out into a sweat. His voice cracked with panic. "Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. It's a miracle you are still alive. We need to do hundreds of tests, heart tests, blood tests, brain tests. Let's do every test there is. Then we'll get you straight back up to the children's ward." Tom didn't say it out loud, but in his head, he shouted the most enormous yes. "Nurse! Nurse!" shouted the doctor, looking as if he was about to faint. Nurse Mees rushed into the x-ray room. "What now, doctor?" "It's an emergency. This boy needs to do tests right now." "What tests?" "All of them. Any you can think of. Now, now, now. Fetch 2 trolleys." "Why do you need 2? "Because I'm going to pass out," said the doctor. Thank you. There we go.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. I'm really hoping that there aren't any doctors like Luppers at the Birmingham Children's Hospital. Are there? No, I'm sure there aren't. That's brilliant. Thank you so much,
Thank
David. Now, obviously, your books are brilliantly illustrated as well by Tony Ross. Now, he's worked on your fiction titles and also your picture books, like There's a Snake in My School, which was the last one. How do you work together to make sure there's a really good author-illustrator relationship?
Well, his illustrations are brilliant, and often people say to me, they get the book and they go, "Well, the illustrations are wonderful." And I say, "Yes, thank you, I didn't do those." He does a brilliant job. I've been really lucky. My first 2 books were illustrated by Sir Quentin Blake, who you all know. Whose books did Quentin illustrate? Roald Dahl, amongst others. Loads of brilliant authors he's worked with. And then he handed the baton to Tony, and we have a lot of fun together. Tony's a brilliant character, but I let him get on with what he does. I don't stand over his shoulder and say, "Can you just do this, can you do that?" Because I know he's much more experienced than me. He writes children's books of his own. He's worked with every great author there is, so he knows what he's doing, and I let him get on with it. And at the end of the process, I ask his wife what he'd like as a present to say thank you, and it's normally a crate of gin. So he gets sent a crate of gin at the end of the process. And he's about 78 years old, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So maybe you shouldn't drink too much gin, not when he's writing. But he's a Superman, and we have a lot of fun together. And now I think, his words and my words and his pictures, they go together really, really beautifully.
They do. It probably says something about your working relationship if he needs that much gin by the end of it. Now let's talk a little bit about your last fiction book before The Midnight Gang, which was The World's Worst Children. Who here's read The World's Worst Children? Who here? Keep your hand up if you are as dreadful as some of the children in the book. Oh, good. Some honest kids out there. I'm very glad. Some honest ones. So it's a brilliant book. Unlike some of the others, it's short stories about lots of different delightfully dreadful kids. Tell us, how did you come up with those characters?
Well, the book came about really because I was going to visit schools and to try and encourage kids to read. And I would ask kids, if some of them found books boring. And occasionally it would normally be a boy putting his hand up saying, "Yeah, I find books boring." I say, "Why not? Why do you find them boring?" He said, "Oh, there's not enough killings in them." And I thought I'd do a book especially for the reluctant reader. I thought I'd make it really fun, short stories, loads and loads of colour pictures, and an emphasis really on the comedy, and no really big moral lessons or anything. And to encourage reluctant readers. Do we have any reluctant readers in today? No, well,
no one's going to admit
couple.
it.
But you're all very nice children who've come out to hear an author speak on a Sunday morning, so I wouldn't expect too many reluctant readers. And then it was really fun coming up with the characters, because it's really fun writing naughty characters or villains. Nice characters are a bit boring, but awful children are a lot of fun. And so you can see some of them up on the. You see my bald spot. You can see some of them on the screen there. They were a lot of fun. There's Sophia Sofa, who never gets up from the sofa. She's watching TV all day. Anyone like that here? Yes, a few mums and dads putting their hands up. We have Brian Wong, who was never ever wrong. We all know someone like that who can never be proved wrong. Blubbering Bertha. She was actually based upon my sister, because it's true. When I was younger, my sister used to roll around on her bed. I'd be in my room doing my homework, and she'd go, "David, get off me, stop hurting me!" And then my mum or dad would run up the stairs and give me a clip round the ear and tell me off, and I hadn't done anything wrong. Until one day, my dad charged up the stairs, and my sister didn't hear. And he saw her rolling around on her bed going, David, get off me!" And then he realized that she was having him on, And then I realized that I could torment her as much as I like and not get into trouble anymore. And so it's interesting, these stories from your past, that was many, many years ago, end up in the book.
Yeah, I love Bertha as well. I think she is the worst one in the book because how frustrating. Has anyone got a sibling like that who tells, yeah, a few hands went up. I could see some sort of siblings looking at each other when you were telling that story, a bit like you do that. So we know that Bertha is based on your sister, but what about you? Are any of the characters based on you?
Probably Windy Mindy was probably based on me.
Should I ask why?
Well, there's nothing funnier than bottom burps, is there, when you're a kid? And when I'm a father myself, and my son looks like he needs to go to the toilet, so he breaks wind. I often go, I think you need to do a poo. And the other day, I broke wind in front of my son, and he went, Daddy, I think you need to do a poo. It's something that, for some reason, it always seems funny, right? So I thought I'd write a whole story about it.
Why not?
And if you like, I can read you some of it today. Shall
Please
I do that? Shall I do
yes.
that? Okay. So this is the tale of Windy Mindy. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was known as Windy Mindy. Way back when she was a baby, Mindy discovered she had the most awful talent for breaking wind. Bubble bombs, thirps, toilet tunes, putt-pups, underburps, trouser toots, blurts, bench warmers, little Tommy squeakers, honkers, bottom yodels. Call them what you will, Mindy would delight in letting them rip. Mindy's wind took on many different shapes and sizes. The little girl could do silent ones, loud ones, deafening ones, long ones, short ones, ones that went rat-tat-tat like a machine gun, and even explosive ones. Mindy's was a talent that appalled everyone unfortunate enough to be near her. People would often be trampled underfoot as they tried to escape the smell. Mindy would deliberately fill herself up with food she knew would make her bottom burp. She would devour all of the following in gigantic quantities: baked beans, prune juice, dried figs, cabbage, lentil soup, radishes, and Brussels sprouts. At school, the teachers would often send Mindy out of lessons for her outbursts. Mindy would claim it was an accident, but the truth was she did it on purpose, every single time. Either the noise would be so disruptive or the smell so overpowering that the classroom had to be evacuated. Then off Mindy would be sent to the headmistress's office, where she would be given a stern ticking off. Mindy, I'm extremely disappointed in you, announced the headmistress on the particular morning that our story begins. The lady kept the door of her office open as a precaution, just in case the girl let another one go. Sorry, headmistress, said Mindy with a smirk. This is the 12th time this week a teacher has sent you to my office, and it's only Tuesday. Well, today Miss Prism had to send you out of her maths lesson for making a noise like thunder. And yesterday, your poor history teacher, Miss Ping, actually fainted in the classroom at the Pong and had to be taken to the sick bay. An evil thought shot across the girl's mind. Came a sound. You wicked child, she shouted as Windy Mindy stifled a giggle. Get out of my office at once. She shooed the little girl out of the room as quickly as she could. Shoo, shoo, shoo! As Mindy took each step towards the door, she blew a little bottom bubble in the direction of the lady. One more sound out of you, and you will be expelled, you hear me? Expelled! Bellowed the headmistress, and slammed her office door shut. Bang! Not wishing to return to her maths lesson, Mindy looked for an empty classroom to hide in until break time. She slipped into the music room. An array of instruments stood ready to be plucked, played, or blown into. Unsurprisingly, Mindy was drawn to the wind instruments. The saxophone, the trumpet, the trombone, the tuba all stood glistening on their stands. The biggest of them all was the tuba, and Mindy walked slowly towards it, as if in a trance. The little girl had no musical ability she knew of, and when she tried to blow into the instrument, a pathetic rumbling sound came out. But just as she was about to give up, Mindy had a mischievous thought. She held the end of the tuba behind her behind, blowing wind from her bottom towards the tuba as hard as she could. A long, low note came out of the tuba. Pleasantly surprised at the sound, Mindy tried again. 3 notes this time in quick succession. Soon, Mindy began putting the notes together in something resembling a tune. It wasn't a classical masterpiece, rather it had the feel of free-form jazz about it. Delighted at this discovery, Mindy began to whirl round the room with the tuba at her behind. The sound the girl was making, by now, was nothing short of wondrous. Outside the classroom, the elderly music teacher, Mr. Tinkle, was passing by. In all his years of teaching, he had never heard a pupil play so superbly. It brought tears to his eyes. When Mr. Tinkle opened the door to the music room, so did the smell. At first, the music teacher was horrified at what he saw. But as the music soared, so did his heart. The young girl was a musical prodigy. She could become one of the all-time greats, playing huge sell-out concerts all over the world. And as for Mr. Tinkle, he would be remembered as the humble teacher who discovered a musical superstar. "Mindy," he exclaimed, "you are a genius." "It's just my bottom burping, sir," replied the little girl. "I know, but please keep those beautiful bottom burps coming. The sound they make is magnificent." The next morning at school, Mr. Tinkle presented the girl with a very special present, a shiny new tuba. "Now, Mindy, I need you to practice until your bum goes numb." "Yes, sir. I have booked the greatest music venue in the world to launch your glittering career, the Birmingham Symphony Hall." Went the girl's bottom. "Was that on purpose?" asked the music teacher. "No, sir, just nerves." Finally, the day came. In Mindy's vast dressing room backstage, there were some last-minute preparations. The little girl was delighted to devour as many of her special windy foods as she possibly could. Porridge, beans, eggs, prune juice, cabbage, cauliflower cheese, and mushy peas. They were all mixed together in a giant vat before she poured them down her throat. To ensure that she would have enough wind for the performance, she topped it off with a huge bottle of fizzy pop. Now Mindy's tummy was bubbling with air. "Isn't it great? I think I'm going to explode, sir. I will have enough wind to play for hours," she added, before excitedly clambering onto a trampoline. Boing, 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 after bouncing for over an hour. The food and the drink in the girl's tummy had been mixed together nicely or horribly, depending on how you look at it. Meanwhile, all the distinguished guests had been seated in the auditorium. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight shone as Mr. Tinkle, as he shuffled onto the huge stage of the Birmingham Symphony Hall. "Your Royal Highnesses, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Windy Mindy." Mindy smiled and bowed to the audience. As she did, a little pop-pop popped out of her bottom. Mr. Tinkle looked on nervously from the side of the stage. Fortunately, as it was downstage, no one seemed to hear, though one of the backstage workers did faint. Next, Mindy turned round and placed the tuba behind her bottom, ready to blow her wind towards it. Gasp! The audience was scandalized. They had never seen anything so rude, especially at the Birmingham Symphony Hall. For a moment, it seemed like a riot might break out. Mindy looked across to Mr. Tinkle, who gestured frantically for the girl to begin. So she did. Immediately, sweet music filled the hall. The audience were shocked into silence. The sound Windy Mindy made was beautiful beyond words. After just a few notes, she had everyone entranced. They were all in the palm of her bottom. This was a moment in music history that the world would never forget. Mr. Tinkle was sure of it. However, after all that gassy food and fizzy pop, plus, of course, all that bouncing up and down on a trampoline, Mindy's wind was particularly fierce. The smell was so appalling, it actually burnt the nostrils when it went up the nose. Now, needless to say, this is the point in the story where things began to go horribly wrong. Suddenly, the music teacher noticed that one by one, the rows of audience members were withering like dead flowers. The stink was hitting them like a tidal wave. In no time at all, the entire audience had passed out. Mr. Tinkle rushed onto the stage to make Mindy stop, but the wall of smell floored him in an instant, and he fell off the stage and plunged into a piano in the orchestra pit. Clang! Suddenly, Mindy realized that as much as she wanted to, she just couldn't stop blowing off. Her bottom was buzzing way out of control, and her bubbly tummy was expanding at an alarming rate. Nothing could hold the gas back. Her bottom was about to go nuclear. There was an eerie silence for a few seconds before Mindy shot so much air out of her behind, unbelievably fast, that she actually took off like a rocket. Whoosh! The gas propelled her up into the air, and she smashed through the roof of the Birmingham Symphony Hall. Mindy zoomed up through the starlit sky at lightning speed, heading straight for outer space. Up there on an international space station, the astronauts on board reported hearing some rather impressive free-form jazz. Thinking it might be alien life attempting to make contact, they put on their spacesuits and rushed outside, only to find themselves gazing open-mouthed in shock at a little girl hurtling past with a tuba behind her and a look of terrible panic on her face. That was the very last sighting of Windy Mindy. So, what is the moral of this tale, I hear you ask? It's that there is absolutely nothing funny about breaking wind, which is why I would never write a story about it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
They are funny. Bottom burps are funny, aren't they? Now, if you just tuned in on Facebook Live and you're wondering what on earth all this talk about trumping is about, I'm joined by the wonderful David Walliams. We're talking about his new book, The Midnight Gang, and all of his other fantastic children's books as well. Now, if you are enjoying the show, do click the love heart. Give us a bit of love. You know the one we mean. We would love for your feedback, and also leave your comments if you've got a question for David, because I'll be asking your questions a little bit later on after a few more questions from me.
Okay.
Now, David, of course, loads of children, everybody in this room and lots of children around the world love reading your books, but did you like reading children's books when you were younger?
Well, I was a bit of a reluctant reader because I really like watching TV and watching films and playing computer games, and it wasn't until I found a book that I loved from the local library that I really got into reading, and that book was 50 Shades of Grey. That was inappropriate, and I shouldn't have said that. The book was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Who's read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, right? And if you haven't, you know the story, you've heard of it, you've seen one of the films, maybe you've seen it on stage even. It's an absolute bona fide classic. It was written over 50 years ago, so it was already, a good sort of 15 years old by the time I read it. Everywhere I go in schools, even around the world, because I've been to Australia, New Zealand, America doing book events, everyone knows it. And it really put me on the path to reading because at last I found a book that I wanted to read for myself. It wasn't a book that a grown-up had told me to read. It was something that I discovered for myself. And that really put me on the path to reading other Roald Dahl books. And then I liked Stigger the Dump was a particular favorite when I was a kid. I don't know if anyone's read that one. I used to like Dr. Seuss books when I was a little bit younger. Then my dad read them to me. And I used to like John Wyndham books, the spooky books, like The Midwich Cuckoos and Day of the Triffids. If you haven't ever read those yourself, it's really worth a read. Fantastic. So that got me into reading. And it's quite an amazing thing for me now when someone comes up to me and says, oh, my son, I couldn't get him to read, and the first book he read was one of your books. I feel like it's a big responsibility that it's not going to be boring, because if you don't read as a child, generally you don't read as an adult, and you're missing out on so much.
That's true, yeah. There's a book out there for everybody, so that must feel really special when one of your books is that book for someone. Now, you mentioned Roald Dahl there, of course. You're obviously a big fan of his. We've been celebrating 100 years of Roald Dahl this year, so his stuff has been absolutely everywhere. And you're often compared to him. In fact, I think on the back of this book, there's a quotation that says, finally, Dahl has a worthy successor. So how does that feel? Was he an inspiration to you when you first started writing?
Yes, I'm sort of like the pound shop Roald Dahl. It's thrilling to be compared to someone you've idolized. I think we're lucky because we shared an illustrator in Quentin Blake, and I suppose I've tried to emulate him. I've not tried to copy him, but I've tried to capture the spirit he had, where he had things that were dark and funny at the same times. If he had a villain, he'd make them funny but they would still be really evil. And also his books feel a bit forbidden. They feel a bit like books that you should read under the covers with a torch. Maybe your parents wouldn't quite approve because they're a little bit naughty, they're a little bit too scary perhaps. And so he really kind of shows you the way, I think, if you're trying to write children's books. Read one of his, and it is always inspiring. But he's so brilliant, I don't think anyone will ever be as good as him. Because even though we have fantastic authors like J.K. Rowling, he's brilliant, no one has ever written that many books, all different to each other. You know, people talk about him having a style, but actually I think they're really vastly different, his books. And he only ever wrote one sequel, which was The Great Glass Elevator. And other than that, he had a different story, different set of characters every time.
Well, one of your similarities is that you both have used grandmas as characters in your books. Gangsta Granny, of course. Who's read and loves Gangsta Granny? Thought as much. Did your own grandma inspire the Gangsta Granny we all know and love?
She did really inspire Gangsta Granny, because my granny's house smelled of cabbage, even if we weren't having cabbage. And she liked to play Scrabble, and I found that a bit boring. And I sort of would be quite reluctant, I think, to spend time with her, until I started asking her about when she was younger. And she would tell me the most incredible stories about living in London during the Blitz, when bombs were raining down from Nazi planes, and ordinary people were losing their lives, and they had to hide in the underground system. And she had the most incredible stories, and I realized that, to my shame, I'd always thought of her as this old person. I hadn't really thought that she'd had this life before, I knew her. And it got me thinking that everyone's got an exciting story to tell. Everyone has got something in their past that would make a great tale. And that was really the starting point for Gangsta Granny. She wasn't an international jewel thief, but she had an exciting life in her youth.
Well, we would love to hear an extract from Gangsta Granny.
Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit for you from Gangsta Granny. Now, this is a part of the story where Ben, who you can see on the cover there, he has found a biscuit tin in his grandma's kitchen that is filled with priceless jewels. They've laid them all out on the carpet, and Granny's been telling him stories about how she stole each one. But at that moment, they notice someone is peering through the window. Ben's eyes darted towards the window. For a brief moment, he saw a dark figure peer through the dirty glass, then quickly disappear out of view. There was a man peering into the window, said Ben breathlessly. Oh no, said Granny. I told you not to look. Shall I go out and see who it was? Said Ben, trying to hide the fact that he was more than a little frightened. Really, he wanted Granny to go out and see who it was. Oh, I bet it was my nosy neighbour, Mr. Parker. He's a retired major, And now he runs the neighbourhood watch scheme. What's that? Asked Ben. Oh, it's a group of local people who keep an eye out for burglars. But Mr. Parker just uses it as an excuse to spy on everyone, the nosy old git. I often come back from the supermarket with my bag of cabbages and see he's spying on me with a pair of binoculars. Is he suspicious about you? Oh, he's suspicious about everyone. We have to keep an eye out for him, young lad. The man is a menace. Ben went over to the window and peered out. He couldn't see anyone. Bring! Ben's heart nearly missed a beat. It was only the doorbell, but if they let Mr. Parker inside, he would see all the evidence the police would need to send Ben and his granny straight to prison. Don't answer it, said Ben, as he ran to the middle of the room and started stuffing all the jewels back in the tin as quickly as he could. What do you mean, don't answer it? He knows I'm at home. He just saw us through the window. You answer the door and I will hide the jewels. Me? Yes, you. Hurry. Bring. This ring was more insistent. Mr. Parker had left his finger on the buzzer for even longer. Ben took a deep breath and walked calmly through the hall to the front door. He opened it. Yes, said Ben in a squeaky high voice. Can I help you? Mr. Parker put his foot inside the bungalow so the front door couldn't be closed on him. Who are you? Barked Mr. Parker nasally. He had a very big nose, which made him seem even nosier than he was, and he already seemed extremely nosy. Because he had a big nose, he also had a very nasal voice, which made everything he said, however serious, seem a little bit absurd. But his eyes shone red like a demon. I'm Granny's friend, spluttered Ben. I mean, grandson, Mr. Parker, sir, he said, retreating back towards the living room. Why are you lying to me? Said Mr. Parker, taking several paces forward as Ben took several paces back. It was as if they were dancing the tango. I'm not lying, cried Ben. They reached the living room door. You can't go in there, yelled Ben, thinking of the jewels still scattered all over the carpet. Why not? Because Granny is doing her naked yoga. Sadly, the nosy neighbour was not convinced. Naked yoga, a likely story. I need to talk to your grandmother right away. Now get out of my way, you nasty little worm of a boy, he said, as he shoved the boy aside and opened the living room door. Granny must have heard Ben through the door because when Mr. Parker burst into the room, she was standing in her bra and knickers in tree pose. Mr. Parker, do you mind? Said Granny in mock horror that he had seen her in a state of undress. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
No, Gangsta Granny, of course, is extremely popular, and there is a TV adaptation of Gangsta Granny. In fact, TV adaptations of lots of your books, including Boy in the Dress, Billionaire Boy, Mr. Stink. Who has watched some of the films of David's books? They are excellent. And of course, they have an all-star cast. Kate Moss has appeared, Miranda Hart, Robbie Williams, Rob Brydon. How did you get those guys involved?
We paid them money to...
that usually does it, doesn't
some
it?
are friends. Miranda's a good friend. Rob Brydon's a good friend. Robbie Williams, I know a bit, and he is like a frustrated actor because he is actually a very funny actor. We've done comic relief sketches with him, and he's always been hilarious in them, so I knew he'd probably want to be in it. And Kate Moss's daughter, she's probably a little old for them now, but her daughter Lila was a big fan of my book, so I knew that if I asked Kate, her daughter would probably say, "No, Mum, you've got to do it." And so it was fun having her because it was surprising. But yeah, and they've turned out, really well, and I'm thrilled with them. And obviously, it brings the story to people who, haven't read the book or not interested in reading, perhaps, but they still might get something out of it.
Definitely. And of course, you like to make an appearance in the TV adaptations as well. And in fact, we've got a question here from Olivia, aged 8, from Leicester, who has been in touch online, and she's asked a great question. She wants to know, if they made a TV film of The Midnight Gang, the new book, who would you rather play, Matron or Dilly?
Okay, I'm given the choice between two female roles.
What does that say?
Seems like she's followed my career quite closely. For those of you who haven't read it, Matron is the evil character who's in charge of the ward, and Dilly is the cleaning lady who's a sort of fag in her mouth the whole time and leaves a trail of ash where she's meant to have cleaned. I think I'd probably rather play the cleaning lady because she's a really, really grotesque figure, and she makes things dirtier than when she found them. And I think she'd be quite fun to play a grotty character like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you are very good at playing lady characters. In fact, we have a clip as evidence right now. Here's a little clip of David playing the dinner lady in Billionaire Boy.
It's best to stick to the basics. That's Mrs. Trafe, worst cook in the world. And any parallel worlds.
Hello, boy. Do you want to know about me specials today?
Not really.
For starter, I done my chilled pilchers soup. The pie today is kidney and custard. And for pud, I done my raw onion mousse.
No thanks.
Spam smoothie?
Just an apple, please, Mrs. Trafe. Same here, Mrs. Trafe.
Oh, suit yourself.
She can't ruin those.
They are two nice, fresh, juicy apples.
I used to have quite a scary dinner lady at my primary school called Mrs. Pierce, and we didn't like her food very much. And she'd have the ladle, the metal ladle, and if we made some comment about the food, she said, "I'll wrap your knuckles faster than you can say Jack Sprat." She said it was saved. She was a terrifying figure. So I've got my revenge by including this character that's based on her.
It's great that you can do that. You have
Yes,
so
you
much power.
can. Store it up.
There you go. Become writers when you grow up and you can get revenge on everybody. Well, we love seeing you on TV. In fact, I believe that for the grown-ups, you've got a new TV show coming out just next week. Am I right in saying? Yeah.
It's called Walliams and Friend. It's on Friday on BBC One. Sketches. Some of them are too rude for the younger children here, but I know that children love to watch things that are rude. So parents will have to sort of record it and then maybe show them particular sketches and not others. Because we used to have that with Little Britain. We'd meet kids after the show, and they'd say, "Oh, I'm allowed to watch it, but my mummy won't let me watch the Bitty sketch," or something like that. So I'm not going to explain what that is, because it was uncalled for. Well. So yes, I used to love comedy shows that I wasn't meant to watch as a kid. Not 9 o'clock news, that kind of thing. Often most of it would go over my head, but I still love watching it.
There you go.
It's a bit forbidden.
One for the grown-ups next week. But of course, Britain's Got Talent is a show that you're a judge on, and that is a family show. So I'm sure lots of you have enjoyed
We've
Britain's Got Talent.
actually made it here.
Have
in
you?
the Birmingham Symphony Hall, yeah.
How exciting. Have you ever been tempted to write a story about one of the people auditioning? Because you do get some characters auditioning, don't you?
Well, you do. Well, one thing, if ever I'm thinking of having an evil villain in one of my stories, I always think, what would Simon Cowell do? And I did actually come up with a story once. I was going to write about him. It was going to be about a boy band where one by one he was replacing them with robots. And Sunita was going to be a kind of like evil henchwoman.
Oh, brilliant.
And then the end of the story, it was going to be that Simon had a metal heart, which is why he couldn't have feelings. Anyway, it turned out it was all true, and so there wasn't any point writing it. But we do meet lots of interesting characters on the show, and of course, I like all the people who are not so talented. I find the talented people a bit boring. I like the ones who are not. And we had this brilliant guy come onto the stage. I can't remember exactly where. And his first line was very odd. He had these dark glasses, his false teeth, and sort of long black dyed hair. And the first thing he said was, "I know what you're thinking. They've dug up Roy Orbison." It's like a really odd first line. Roy Orbison is a wonderful singer who sadly died a good 10 years or so ago. And We said, what's your act going to be? He said, I'm going to eat live cockroaches. And he got out this brown paper bag, and true to his word, he started eating live cockroaches. Well, he went on to win the series that year. No, he immediately got buzzed off. But it got me thinking. I thought, if there's a man out there who'll eat live cockroaches, what else might he do? Might he turn rats into burgers? Might he grind up those cockroaches to create a special sauce that he puts on those burgers? So I created a whole fantasy life for this man. Didn't have to pay him a penny. And put it in the book Ratburger. And so I would say to any budding writers out there, obviously I'm lucky doing a show like that, meeting loads of people, but keep your eyes and ears open, because you never know when you might meet someone who's going to inspire a story, or someone tells you, something that happened to them, which also gets your mind whirring, thinking, oh, that might make a good story.
Yeah, definitely. People watch. Would you like to read an extract from Ratburger?
Yes, so this is the last bit I'll read for you today. So it's just a little bit from Ratburger to give you a little taste of Bert. And this is a part in the story where Zoe has found out all about Bert's evil plan, and she hid in his ice cream van, rat-catching van, and now they're in the warehouse where he has the big machinery that turns the rats into burgers. "Get away from me!" shouted Zoe, her fingers fumbling frantically to open the door. "Oh, what?" wheezed Bert, edging closer and closer. He was so close now, she could smell him. "Oh, I will tell everyone about what you're doing here, turning rats into burgers." "No, you won't." "Yes, I will." "No, you won't." "Yes, I will." "Yes, you will." "No, I won't." "Ha ha! Got you. I knew you were trouble that day in your flat. That's why I let you climb into the back of my van and come into my secret lair." "You knew I was here all along." "Oh, yes. I could smell you. And now I'm going to turn you into a burger. That's what evil children get for sticking their little noses in other people's business." "No!" screamed Zoe, still desperately trying to open the door. "Ha ha! My very first child burger." He reached out to grab her. She dodged out of the way, but his big hairy hand grasped a clump of her frizzy ginger hair. Zoe slapped him hard across the face, and his dark glasses flew into the air and onto the ground. "No!" shouted Bert. Zoe looked up at his eyes, but they weren't there. Where his eyes should be, Bert had only 2 empty black sockets in his face. "Ah!" screamed Zoe in terror. "You have no eyes!" "Yes, child. I'm completely blind." "But you don't have a white dog or a white stick or anything." "Don't need them. I've got this. This is why I'm the greatest rat catcher in the world, even of all time." But why?" "Because I have no eyes, my dear. I have developed an acute sense of smell. I can smell a rat from miles away, especially a cute little baby one like yours." But you drive a van. You can't drive if you're blind." Bert smiled, showing off his filthy false teeth. "It's perfectly easy to drive with no eyes. I just follow my nose." "You'll kill someone." "In the whole 25 years since I've been driving, I've only run over 59 people. 59? Hello! It's nothing. Some of them I had to reverse over to finish them off, of course." "Murderer!" "Yes, but if you don't declare them, then the insurance company lets you keep your no-claims bonus." Thank you. That's a bit of Bert. Thank you.
The picture's gone off now, but he does look a bit like Roy Orbison, doesn't he?
He does,
He's
yeah.
got that look.
He does. The long hair and the dark glasses.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for reading that, David. It's been lovely hearing you read from all your books today. Hi, if you've just joined us watching on Facebook Live, I'm joined by the wonderful David Walliams on stage at the Birmingham Symphony Hall. And stay tuned because very soon I'm going to be asking David some of your questions and some from our live audience here as well. Before I do, though, speaking of your fans getting in touch with you, you must get fan mail from all around the world. Have you had any particular gems?
I have, and I like the rude letters the best. Sometimes children are unintentionally rude. I'm going to read this one for you. Dear David Walliams, I love your books, but I got one book wasn't very good. The name of the book was Billionaire Boy. It just wasn't that funny. I didn't really think it was that good. But I love your other books like Gangsta Granny and Demon Dentist. I'm getting more of your books. Back to Billionaire Boy. I didn't really think it was funny or that interesting. Thank you. Sincerely, Molly, aged 8. That's a real letter, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
So I wrote back, Dear Molly, I'm so pleased you enjoy Billionaire Boy so much. This is another one I got. This was after Billionaire Boy was on TV. This letter is not fan mail. Yes, it has been sent to the fan mail address, but it is a complaint. Firstly, I've read all your books and have loved them, especially Ratburger. I also really enjoyed Billionaire Boy, which is the subject of this complaint. I'd anticipated the arrival of it on the screens, but after I watched it, I was highly disappointed. First off, the acting was awful, except for the adults. I could have done better, and I'm 11, nearly 12. Secondly, some names were changed for no reason whatsoever. Joe's character traits were completely changed. It got confusing and a bit boring. This letter goes on for a long time. I hope you take into account this complaint and do not throw it away after you read complaint. So she's asked me to pass on that letter to the scriptwriters. But one of my favourite letters, it started like this. It said, Dear David, I'm writing to you because you are my second favourite author. Oh. Need to say it. My favourite author is J.K. Rowling. But my teacher said she'd be far too busy to reply. So I'm writing to you, right? So I'd had the great pleasure in meeting Jo Rowling a few times, and I had her email address, and I sent it on to her because I thought it would amuse her. And she said, it reminded me of when I went into a school and did a talk about the Harry Potter books. And at the end, all the children were asked to write down on a piece of paper what they thought of the visit, and then I was given them at the end. And one girl just wrote on a piece of paper, she needs to brush her hair. A Harry Potter author. The only comment. Spent the whole time staring at her hair thinking she needs a brush. But these letters are a lot of fun to read. And obviously the brilliant thing about children is that they don't lie, do they? I mean, they tell you the truth. If they find something boring and annoying, they tell you, and that's what's so great about being a children's author. Because I bet there's some grown-ups here today, like me, who've picked up a book, read it from cover to cover, not enjoyed a single word of it, and just felt, oh, it's a big, important book, I should read it. Well, I don't think children do that. I think children don't enjoy something. They immediately cast it aside.
Yeah, I love the honesty. We get a lot of that on CBBC as well. I like that you always tell the truth. That's what I like about you lot. Now, we have got some questions from some of your fans,
Okay.
but we've only got a few minutes left, so we're probably going to have to speed through them.
Okay.
Francis, who is
Yes.
sat in seat 8 on row B. Hi, Francis. She's age 10. Francis has asked, what would your dream be if you were in the Midnight Gang?
What would my dream be if I was in the Midnight Gang? That is actually a good question. And I suppose to fly, that would be a good one, right? I think to actually be able to fly. And I've always loved that image in Peter Pan of the children in their night clothes flying over London. And I think that probably partly inspired the Midnight Gang. So I think flying would be just so exciting, wouldn't it? So I might buy a jetpack. Get that done.
Good answer.
Good question.
Hayley, age 32, row A, seat 7, wants to know which
Didn't need to put her age, did she really? I mean,
which which character from the Midnight Gang can you most relate to?
Which character can I most relate to? Well, George is the one who's got a sort of stack of sweets under his bed and is munching away all the time. And I think I can relate to him because I like to eat too much chocolate.
Me too. Millie, age 10, seat number A2 in the front stalls, says, apart from you, who is the funniest person in the world?
Apart from me, who is the funniest person in the world? Well, I think it is just me. Well, I got some friends who really make me laugh. Rob Brydon, who played Mr. Parker in Gangsta Granny, he really makes me laugh every time I speak to him on the phone or something. He has me in hysterics. Quite lucky knowing lots of comedians because of my job and making me laugh. I love the Monty Python people like John Cleese. I love Mel Brooks films as well. And Will Ferrell I love. I got to meet him. He's a real hero. So I love to laugh, and I'm lucky to have some funny friends.
I'm still waiting for it to be like the 1st of December so it's acceptable to watch Elf. Okay. Thomas, age 9, seat number 12, row 5, level 3, hello, wants to know, which book are you most proud of?
Which book am I most proud of that I wrote? Probably Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I mean, I let her get the credit for it. No, I think, well, you know, you hope your books are getting better. You know, you hope because that's actually the 9th novel I've written.
Wow.
Incredibly. And so I'm actually probably proudest of this one, because it also deals with something that's quite difficult, which is children who are unwell in a children's hospital. I went to the Birmingham Hospital, Children's Hospital today. I had a fantastic visit and got to meet the kids. But I know it's tough. It's tough for everyone there. It's tough for the parents. It's tough, you know, it's tough for the staff, and most of all, of course, it's tough for the kids who aren't well. And so I knew I was dealing with something that was a little bit difficult, and I think hopefully the book handles all that sensitively and is funny too, because even in darkest of times, I think there's always still humour.
Yeah, I think you strike that balance really well. Jake, age 6, row MC 11, says, if you wake up in the night for a midnight feast, what food do you choose? I'd have chocolate.
I would probably have, for some reason, it's chocolate or cheese, or a combination of the two, which isn't very nice. Yes, there's something, I don't know what it is, but late at night you always think, oh, I'd like to eat some chocolate, which is the worst time to eat it, because you're not going to burn it off. So chocolate buttons are my favourite, especially the giant ones.
Oh, yeah, those are good. Christine from Facebook Live wants to know, were you naughty at school?
Was I naughty at school? I was actually, and I used to take the mickey out of the teachers a bit and act up, and I was a terrible show-off. It's hard to believe, isn't it? But I was a terrible show-off, so yes, I did get in trouble a fair bit, but it's turned out okay.
And this is a great question to end on, another one from Facebook Live. Alex wants to know, will Raj ever have a real special offer?
I doubt it. I mean, I don't think you want to take advantage of any of his special offers, but it's a great fun writing him as a character, and you almost feel like he's real, you know, he's been around so long now. Well, he is real, isn't he?
Is real, yeah.
Real newsagent. But unfortunately, my newsagent moved away, and it just happened when I didn't visit his shop, I didn't know he was moving, and it's not there anymore, so I don't even know if he's aware that he has inspired this character that you all know.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for all of your questions. Everybody who did ask a question will receive one of these World of Walliams box sets. We will sort that out after the show because there's so many people in here. We can't start going out into the audience. It's the end of the show now. We've got no time. But, David, I'm just going to ask you to do a bit of technology before we go.
Yes.
And take a selfie. This is a very special piece of equipment we've got here to do a little selfie.
This takes a 360 picture. So it will get all of you in it. And so I'm going to press the button, but I want everyone to squeeze in, please, if you can. And yeah, that's better with the lights on.
Everyone's shuffling like they're just trying to sort the hair out.
And I want everyone to say bottoms. Bottoms!
Bottoms!
There we go. That's a 360 picture, and it'll be up on Facebook. That's good. Okay.
That is magical.
In case you thought it was sort of pointing at me, it was. But it got all of you in as well. I want to say a big thank you to Katie, who's done an amazing job.
Thanks, David.
Our fantastic signer. And thank you all so much for coming out on this wet Sunday morning. I hope you had a good time. It's been brilliant for me, and I'm so thrilled you will enjoy my books, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Thank
you very much.
A round of applause for David Walliams.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you.
I hope you've all had a wonderful time. If you want to get a copy of The Midnight Gang, there are some pre-signed copies out in the foyer. I hope you all have a very wonderful Sunday afternoon. Thank you for coming. And let's give one big last round of applause to David Walliams. Bye, everyone.